Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Music of the Week. As always, 6 albums to go through, so let's go through 6 albums. And we begin with a bit of a rarity. We begin with a debut, a band named Beyond Extinction, with their first album, Where They Gather. This is an Essex-based deathcore band, and I'll give this one a B+. I think it was handled quite well. It's got some really good heavy instrumentation. If you like your really heavy, sort of old-school feel to your deathcore, I can recommend this. The drumming especially is quite good. I will admit I wasn't huge on the production, though. It was self-produced and self-released, and I do applaud the band for doing everything in-house and on their own, but I feel like some of it feels a bit off. I feel like some of it is a bit overdone. It's a bit too clean in places for my liking, and I think it can get in the way of the pacing at times as well. I do sort of like the lyrics. They have a really grim and dark theme of the reality of cultural hatred and how shite modern life is, and it's actually treated with a really good level of seriousness. In fact, that's it's going to be a theme for a few albums in this episode. There is a couple that do deal with some really dark shit. However, I heavily fucking enjoy the performances, and I'll shout out vocalist Jasper Harmer. That is such a cool name, and yeah, he's got a really good guttural growl to him, and the rest of the band are really good too. Whoever the lead guitarist is does a good job, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention former guitarist Zach Scott, who passed away a couple of years ago, I think, and yeah, I think it was 2023, and that almost put a dampener on this album even existing, because the band didn't know if they were going to continue without him. And they weren't even around that long. I don't know the year that they first formed. I think maybe 2019 if I had to take a swing, but like, unless I'm thinking of a different... No, I am thinking of a different band that we're going to get into later. The quality of the structure of this one as well. It's got a really good through line and good build-ups, and I like that it stays in one really fast gear for the most part. It doesn't change things up, but I feel like this is an album that doesn't really need to. It's got a pace that realises what it is and leads into that quite well. Sticks to it, and it's a really good example of, for lack of a better term, One Trick Pony. And again, like, I've done this comparison many times, but I kept thinking of Collapse by Grief Ritual, which I haven't listened back to in a fair bit, but like, yeah, I don't know. It was just felt a bit similar to that, but like, you know, if Collapse by Grief Ritual is the more hopeful, optimistic side of the coin, of the British metalcore slash deathcore coin, then Where They Gathered by Beyond Extinction is the sort of darker half of that, and a lot more bleak in how it's executed. But I still think it's executed quite well, and this is a band with a ton of potential, and I think they lean into it. I would say maybe get a proper producer next time, or just learn to produce a little bit better. Again, it's not terrible, but I just think it's a bit much at points. If this band learns restraint at some point, they could be a force to be reckoned with soon. I'm hoping. Next we have Dying Wish with their third album, Flesh Stays Together, a band I quite like because they sort of caught me off guard with how good their debut was back in 2021, then their really good sequel, Symptoms of Survival, in 2023. Their debut was called Fragments of a Bitter Memory. Album 3, though, I'm giving an A, and I think this is probably their best album, and it's also their most nihilistic and hopeless. This is one with really rough themes dealing with abandonment, tragedy, and in a fuck you kind of effort to get through dealing with grief in a way. But holy shit, it is not a hopeful feeling album. I feel like every year I talk about at least one album that doesn't care about my personal safety. It's rare when the cover doesn't care about my personal safety. I feel iffy about even showing it. But yeah, the fact that it depicts violence against someone who I don't even think is the band's singer. I'm not sure who's being choked by the bag on the cover. I don't think it's the singer because the singer has blonde hair. So I don't know exactly what's happening with it, but it unsettles me greatly. But that's the inside point of the album. The instrumentation is really good at that. It's grotty as fuck. It's super heavy, and the breakdowns hit really fucking hard. And there's not really as much melody as there is on previous albums. It's still there, but I would say of all three of their albums, it's their most like ugly and unclean sounding, which is entirely intentional and really fits the vibe it's going for. Performances are also fucking great, and I'll shout out Emma Boston, who puts in a Boston performance. The band aren't from Boston, though. I'm saying Boston because that's a British term for something that's good. The band are from Portland in Oregon. But yeah, Emma's really great, and it's probably her most raw performance, and she leads the charge well. The rest of the band also really good. Drummer really good. Good shit all around. Another reason I like the structure as well, besides it being miserable and very, very grim, is just how atmospheric it feels. It has a really good focus on the heavy side of things, but it's also got like this sort of creeping like force in the background feel to it. And I do feel like that force could have made itself a bit more well known at points, but I like it when it does make itself known. And also quite like the production. It highlights the latest really well, and Will Putney held the production. And if you're going to get someone to do any sort of like heavy music production since 2005, I want to say, I don't know how long Will Putney's been doing this, but he's really good at this shit. So yeah, great production, really good shit all around, and yeah, probably Dying Wish's best album. And if you like your mental core to be miserable and just generally have a sense of not giving shit of how you feel, then this is probably the album for you. Next we have my potential hot take album of the year, because it is Geese with their new album Getting Killed, and I liked this one, but I was very confused about where this one was supposed to go. I'm giving it a B. So it's one of those cases of an album getting all of this acclaim from everyone, I'm just not fully getting it, but you know what, I will credit the album for at least knowing what it is, and yeah, it's got a really good feel, for lack of a better term, so let's talk more about that. Instrumentation, I'm quite confused by, but I like all the things happening. There's a really good soul-infused focus to all the madness that's happening. Lyrics, I wasn't as keen on. I couldn't really find anything for themes, and they're actually surprisingly sparse in terms of writing, but I think maybe the main theme is that of anger taking over reason, which I think is supposed to be present in the structure, but like, the album doesn't get much. I would say, I would argue that the album actually gets lighter as it goes along, and I spun this a couple of times and I still didn't really get that feeling of building on the central theme. I do feel like the structure itself also relies too much on the weird factor, but it can make good use of it for the most part, and it's an album that feels comfortable with itself, but I feel like it relies on it a bit too much. I do enjoy the performances. I will shout out frontman Cameron Winters, who's like a decade younger than me, which grosses me the fuck out, to be honest, but yeah, super talented frontman, quite a lot of charisma to him, I will admit. I think he plays guitar as well. It's hard to tell because I couldn't really hear a ton of guitar throughout this album, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's because of production, which I did like. I think it fits well with the album's chaos, and the producer, Kenny Beats, yeah, okay, just making sure, you know, quite a well-known producer. But like, man, I don't know. I feel like there was just something in this one that just wasn't clicking for me. It didn't have the endearing factor that Cardiac's album did, you know? Just not my personal cup of tea. And if people are Geese fans, like the band, not the animal, that's fair enough. I just, like, I couldn't fully settle into this one, so I'll just take that on me, like, being a bit too dumb to maybe understand the music. Like, not the band's fault, completely on me. Next, we go to one of my favourite countries for music in general. We go to Australia, specifically Melbourne, for punkabilly alt-rock band The Living End, and their 9th album and first one in 7 years, titled I Only Trust Rock and Roll. And this is the first of 3 albums in a row I'm giving an A+. I fucking love this one. It's really good punk rock. I love the lyrical themes, first of all. There's really good stuff about online culture and political issues, and just using rock as a force of just solidarity and trying to progress forward, like using music as a positive force. I actually saw a reviewer who wasn't too keen on this, and actually gave a mostly sort of negatively worded review, but said that they overall enjoyed the album. And, like, they were saying that using rock as a force to combat, like, things like politics and things like that was a bit cheesy. Like, no, we could use a bit more optimism, you miserable bastard. But overall, yeah, really great writing. Also like the performances, and I'll shout out Chris Chaney. Dude has so much charisma and personality and tons of energy for a guy who's 50? Nearly? I think he might just turn 50, actually, I'm not sure. But the entire trio rules, and I like the fact that the bassist Scott Owen plays a double bass. I mean, I'm not familiar with rockabilly as a genre, but I didn't know that they play double bass, which is fucking cool. And speaking of, the instrumentation is really good. I think it's got a really good rockabilly influence, and there's just this like sharpness to everything. Not just instrumentation, but there's a sharp quickness and wit to everything that I think helps a lot with the instrumentation. And I like the guitar solos. There's some really good guitar solos on this album. Production was also quite solid, really organic, and adds really good detail, but not overtaking and just letting things sound as sharp as they do. And I also like the structure. I think it's got a good energy and style mix, even if a few songs could blur on occasion, especially in the midway point of the album. I do feel like that's maybe some of the weaker aspects of it, but all in all, still really good punk rock, Aussie punk rock at that, for a band that's been around for 31 bloody years. They're younger than I am, which is weird to say. Well, I say the band's career is younger than I am. Like, the band themselves, I think their youngest member is still 17 years older than me. So, I don't know. But still, overall, really solid stuff. I quite like this. And, yeah, it's Aussie band. It's punk rock Aussie. I like Aussie punk rock. I feel like I forgot to mention it, but Geese is a sort of indie rock band. I'm not really fully sure what the deal is there, but that's not who we're here to talk about now. Because we're here to talk about another band that also made a previous top 30 list, the other one being Dying Wish. This is Sprints with their second album, All That Is Over, the follow up to 2024's debut, Letter to Self, and somehow they managed to top a previous effort in such a short time. Yeah, this one is getting an A+, and I think part of the reason they might have topped the previous effort and the reason why the previous one was so low is because that was a January release and probably one of the few exciting things about January 2024 in terms of music. But yeah, this one is going to make my top 30 sorting a bit more complicated. So let's begin with the lyrical themes, and I love the fact that they were written in real time, and, you know, in case you haven't been able to tell, a lot has happened in a year and 8 months, because the themes and lyrics cover a lot of political stuff. There's a lot of personal stuff as well, but, like, there's a song, well, okay, I think there's songs that cover specifically the attacks on Gaza, the wildfires in LA, which I think happened like a month after the debut dropped, and Trump being a cunt, basically. And it's all done kind of in a sense to make sense of what the fuck is happening with the world, but it's such a wondrously realised and written theme. The performances are all great as well, and I will shout out new guitarist Zach Stevenson, who fits in wonderfully. His guitar work is really good. The front lead singer woman, also really good. Daniel Fox produced the album, and production's also great. I love the detail that he adds, and I thought he was good last time, but no, there's more attention to detail and more layering and more of a sense of control that he has over the sound without the sound feeling too controlled, which I really think helps. I also love the structure. I really think it's a masterclass on it to build up and then release the tension. Doing that, a lot to great effort, and again, kind of one trick, but it's a great fucking trick. And to be honest, I like how they mix it up as well, because it doesn't always just come out of nowhere or is built up to. It's mixed up in terms of the pacing, and I quite like that. And instrumentation are also great. It's a bit more punky than their first album. The drumming especially is proof of that, and there's just this more sort of like chaotic and manic feel to things, but in a way that makes sense, because again, it fits with how fucking weird the last year and 8 months has felt. Because it has, hasn't it? It's felt a bit crazy. And yeah, I mean, somehow I love Letter to Self, but I think this one, well, no, I feel like this one is definitely a lot better. And this one fucking hit me in some really big places as well. I will say not as emotionally charged as Letter to Self felt in some ways, but more real. And I think more necessary as a result. So yeah, if you've heard any buzz about Sprints, and if you thought maybe you wouldn't get into their debut, I urge you to check out their sophomore effort here. Absolutely fucking worth it, in my opinion. And finally, we have the band returning, well, releasing their first new full-length studio album in 18 years at the very least. They did have a couple of reunion shows since 2007, but it is the starting line with their newest album, Eternal Youth, their fourth album if memory serves. And yeah, pop-punk band from Churchville, Pennsylvania. Could keep that in, fuck it. I'm giving this one an A+ as well. I did sort of spoil that when I talked about the Living Ends album, but I don't really care. I will admit that I was quite surprised with how taken I was with the instrumentation. I quite liked it. It's a good mix of their pop-punk emo sound, but the instrumentation and really the vibe of the entire album is more grizzled and informed by years of experience, you know? Which makes sense because their debut album came out when most of them were still teenagers. At least the lead singer was still a teenager. I mean, he was 19 when their best-known song came out. It was 18 when the album that had that song in it came out. So, yeah, I think the instrumentation is really good. Sort of indication of that is the one I'm looking for. Sorry about that. But yeah, really good riff work. I like the guitar work. I like the keyboard because it's the first full-length one to have their keyboardist on it. And really good guitar, really good bass, really good drums. And I like the almost Hot Water Music-esque feel that the riffs have. I also quite like the lyrics. There's a really good sense of self-awareness and an overall hopeful feel. And honestly, this year especially, we need more just unironic and hopeful optimism in music in general, but also just in 2025 in general, because I know that a main thing I've gone through is like really miserable themes for this year, but you know, for this video, but like, it's just nice to have an album, it's just nice to end with an album that's happy in a way. I also quite like the performances, and I'll shout out Kenny Vasali, who, if you think he's going to sound anything like he did when The Best of Me came out, think again. He's a man in his 40s now, and he sounds grizzled and rough, and like the punk singers I quite like listening to, like Hot Water Music, like Spanish love songs, like Face to Face, you know? I like that sort of like more grizzled, experienced veteran feel, And yeah, I mean, he's still got energy, but like, again, it's the experience that comes with it, and that applies to the rest of the band as well. It's really fucking wonderful to witness. I also like the production, mostly because I'm not used to Willie producing pop punk. I think he might have done it once before, but I'm used to him producing. I'm used to him producing emo in general and more post-hardcore acts. But like, I think that's why it works though, because it gives this album more of a post-hardcore and emo feel. It's not fully there, but there's like tinges of it now and then, you know. And I think it just works really well with the style. And I also quite enjoy the structure. I did maybe want a few longer songs. I would say is maybe my least favorite part about the album, but there's still really good bounce and a sense of fun. And I like the optimism that it carries, and the songs at least try to sound distinct. There's a lot of really good different influences thrown in, and most of them really work quite well. So yeah, just really fucking enjoyable stuff and stuff that made me happy. Again, I think we need a bit more of this year. Next is favourite album cover and favourite song. I'll give favourite song to Surrender Everything by Dying Wish from their album Flesh Stays Together. It's just really fucking incredible, probably the best song they've ever penned, and yeah, definitely their most chilling song ever put out. Just really fucking good themes and really good vocals as well. Favourite cover, I think just because it's funny, I'm going to give it to Getting Killed by Geese, because it's a really nicely composed shot, but I like that the main thing is just the person on the cover, who I think might be the singer, you can't really tell because of the light covering the face, is like, he's got a trumpet in one hand, and he's blowing the trumpet, but he's sort of looking down at you, and he's got a revolver pointed at you. I like that it's a revolver, because they're the coolest type of handgun to me, but I know, it just kind of made me laugh, and I sort of appreciate an album cover that can make me laugh whether it's trying to or not. And there's no listening list for next week because we've just kicked into October, so I've really got to sort out the albums for the month itself. But yeah, next thing you'll see me for will be hopefully tomorrow night, PBW versus AVW, the Halfway Show. I've got to update the results and update many more things, but I'm still working on things because holy hell, the fact that I've been able to get so much done in such a little time, and it's still so much longer than I thought it would because Turkey had twats, will be good. Will be good. But yeah, I'll see you tomorrow for that, and hopefully on Saturday for more Citizen Sleep, because I didn't get to do any last week because I was too busy working on the EFED, so hopefully I'll be able to get that done for then. But as always, thank you for watching, you're awesome. Bye bye.